I stood on the icy driveway in my socks, holding a single black trash bag containing everything I owned. My older brother stepped onto the porch, tossed my father's faded leather watch into the snow at my feet, and sneered, "Dad's gone. The house is mine, and you're nothing but a leech. Get off my property." For 28 years, I had poured my life, my savings, and my heart into caring for our dying father while my brother vanished to chase his own ambitions. But the moment the funeral flowers wilted, he produced a new will, signed just weeks before Dad passed, leaving him the multi-million-dollar family estate and leaving me homeless. He thought he had won. He thought I was broken. But what my brother didn't realize was that I knew a secret about Dad's past, and 3 months later, he never expected what I bought. My name is Clara Jenkins, and I am 32 years old. For as long as I can remember, I believed in simple values: loyalty, hard work, and family. My father had built a modest yet valuable 15-acre estate at the edge of town, complete with a historic farmhouse and decades of memories. When he was diagnosed with a degenerative illness 6 years ago, I didn't hesitate. I put my career as a junior architectural planner on hold, moved back home, and took care of him every single day. My older brother, Mark, was a completely different story. Mark was charismatic, arrogant, and constantly chasing get-rich-quick real estate schemes. He visited Dad maybe twice a year, usually when he needed money. When Dad passed away quietly on a Tuesday evening, I was devastated. But the ink on the death certificate was barely dry before Mark arrived with a corporate lawyer in tow. He presented a revised will dated less than a month before Dad's death, a period when Dad was heavily medicated and barely coherent. It left the entire estate, the house, and all liquid accounts exclusively to Mark. Before I could even process the shock, Mark had a moving crew outside. He claimed I was taking up space, had security escort me off the driveway, and locked the iron gates behind me. I spent the first few nights staying on the couch of my closest friend, Sarah. The emotional toll was heavier than the financial collapse. Everything I had worked to maintain for 6 years was stripped away in a matter of minutes. Mark changed the locks, posted "no trespassing" signs along the perimeter, and blocked my phone number. A week after the eviction, Sarah helped me go through the few belongings I had managed to grab in that single trash bag before being thrown out. Tucked at the bottom was Dad's old steel toolbox from his workbench in the garage. While searching through the lower compartment for a pair of pliers, my fingers caught on a false bottom lined with faded felt. I lifted the metal divider and found a locked metal tin. Using a small screwdriver, I popped the lock open. Inside wasn't money or jewelry. It was a thick manila envelope stuffed with yellow documents, an unfiled property survey from 30 years ago, a brass key, and a handwritten ledger detailing a private transaction Dad had made back in 1994. Dad had always been quiet about his finances, but as I turned the pages, I realized he had kept one massive secret from the entire family. The next morning, I brought the envelope to a senior real estate attorney and a forensic accountant. What we discovered left me speechless. Decades ago, before the town expanded, Dad had purchased a forgotten 5-acre commercial parcel directly adjoining our family estate, as well as an exclusive, private access easement road that served as the sole entry point to the main road. Because the property lines had been redrawn by the county in the early 2000s, the land trust Dad established was filed under a dormant holding company that didn't appear on standard property searches. More importantly, the land trust was structured with a specific survivor clause. Upon Dad's passing, ownership of the holding company did not pass through his personal estate or will. It transferred automatically and immediately to me, as I was named the sole living trustee in the original 1994 deed. The commercial plot itself was valuable, but its true power lay in its location. It sat directly in front of the family estate, controlling the only paved road, the main utility lines, and the surrounding commercial zoning rights. Mark hadn't just stolen the house. He had unknowingly walked into a financial trap, completely unaware that his stolen estate was virtually landlocked without my permission. Every instinct in me wanted to march up to the front gates, throw the documents in Mark's face, and demand my home back. But I knew Mark. If I showed my hand too early, his lawyers would drag me through years of expensive litigation, burying me in legal fees until I was forced to settle. Instead, I chose to play the long game. For 3 months, I kept completely silent. I took out a loan using the commercial plot as collateral and hired a private investigator to monitor Mark's moves. Just as I suspected, Mark was eager to cash in. He assumed he was a real estate mogul now. He took out a massive $1.2 million hard money mortgage against the family home to fund an extravagant lifestyle and to begin construction on a luxury housing development on the estate's back acreage. He hired contractors, brought in heavy machinery, and took on high-interest debt, fully convinced he was about to make tens of millions. What he failed to check, because of his sheer arrogance, was whether he actually held clear title to the access roads and utility corridors required for commercial development. He was building an empire on sand, and I was quietly waiting for the tide to come in. By month 3, Mark's high-risk loans were maturing, and the bank required him to secure clear commercial access permits to finalize his project's funding. That's when the Municipal Land Board put up adjacent city-owned utility easements for public auction to resolve long-standing tax liens. Mark needed that specific auction lot to salvage his entire development plan. On the day of the public auction at the county courthouse, Mark walked into the room wearing a tailored suit, surrounded by his investors and legal team. He looked like he already owned the town. When bidding opened on the key commercial access corridor, Mark confidently made the opening bid of $100,000. $150,000. A voice called out from the back. Mark turned around, his smile instantly vanishing as his eyes locked onto mine. I was wearing a sharp dark blazer, holding a bitter paddle, flanked by my attorney. $200,000. Mark snapped, his voice rising in panic. $300,000, I said calmly. Mark's face flushed bright red. He tried to bid higher, but his lenders on the phone frantically warned him that his credit line was maxed out from his mortgage debt. The auctioneer raised his gavel, going once, twice. Sold to Ms. Clara Jenkins. I didn't just buy the land corridor. I bought the underlying primary mortgage debt that Mark's lenders had quietly listed on the secondary market to hedge their risk. I now owned the road, the utility access, and his mortgage. 2 days later, I drove up the long winding driveway of the family estate in a brand new sedan. Mark was standing on the front porch, exactly where he had stood 3 months prior, when he threw me out in the cold. But this time, there was no sneer on his face, only sheer desperation. "Clara, what the hell are you doing?" Mark shouted, running down the steps as I stepped out of the car. "You can't be here. This is my property." I pulled a thick folder from my briefcase and handed it to him. "Check page 4, Mark," I said, keeping my voice steady and cold. "You own the house, but I own the private road you're standing on, the water lines running under it, and the commercial right-of-way. Furthermore, as of 9 a.m. this morning, I acquired your defaulted mortgage note from your primary lender." Mark frantically flipped through the pages, his hands trembling violently as he realized the legal reality. "You're landlocked, Mark. No heavy machinery can cross my land, no utilities can connect to your project, and your $1.2 million loan is in immediate default. And as for that, will you force Dad to sign? My lawyers have already filed a claim for elder financial abuse and deed fraud based on the land trust records." Mark fell completely silent. The arrogance that had defined him his entire life shattered right there in the afternoon light. Within weeks, facing catastrophic bankruptcy, criminal investigations into the fraudulent will, and total financial ruin, Mark signed over the entire estate to me in exchange for dropping the personal liability suits against him. He left town with nothing more than a suitcase and a mountain of personal debt. I walked back up the porch steps of the home where I had spent 28 years of my life. I unlocked the front door with my father's original key and stepped inside. The house was quiet, but for the first time in months, it felt peaceful. My brother thought he could throw me out and erase me from our family story. He thought power came from cruelty and greed. But he underestimated the quiet strength Dad had passed down to me. I didn't get my life back through anger or violence. I got it back through patience, strategy, and truth. As I sat on the porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, I knew I was finally home, and nobody was ever going to take it away from me again.